Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Meet the Expert with Elliot Callan. Cannabis, hemp. That's our discussion today. We're going to get into some interesting things about the real estate related to cannabis and hemp and the business related to growing it, not distribution so much, certainly not smoking it, taking it, rubbing it on. That's not what we're going to do today. We're going to talk with Anthony Coniglio from Connecticut, NewLake Capital Partners over there, an East Coast company that specializes in the real estate of there. So let me welcome you, Anthony, to the show.
Thank you, Elliot. Great to be here.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question of what it means to have a portfolio of cannabis properties and what that means for consumers. And you are a public company, which means people can invest in them. And let me remind everybody, we are money managers managing $500 million or so, plus another $500 million in a different company. And we help people make money. That's our goal. So we bring in people like Anthony. And if things like this fit into your portfolio and you want to hear about portfolio construction and how this type of industry fits in, call me. I'm at 925-314-8503 or Elliot, ELLIOT, at prosperityfinancialgroup.com or prosperityfinancialgroup.com. And so don't hesitate to reach out. So let's talk a little bit about the real estate world of cannabis, Anthony. Tell me about it. What does that mean? What does it mean to consumers? What does it mean to investors? And so forth.
Yeah, so our business at NewLake, we focus on what's called the state legal cannabis industry. So as we sit here today, over 40 states have legalized cannabis consumption for medical purposes, and 24 states have legalized cannabis for recreational purposes. Because of the Controlled Substances Act, there is a federal ban on interstate commerce with cannabis. So each cannabis company needs to replicate their infrastructure on a state-by-state basis. And that's a very real estate capital intensive endeavor. So think cultivation facilities, think dispensaries. In all of these states, you have to sell out of a licensed location. And the cultivation very often happens in a large indoor facility. There are some operators that have large outdoor grows, but by and large, a lot of the production that happens in the industry is in an indoor, typically an industrial facility that's either purpose-built or retrofitted specifically to grow cannabis. And so that requires a lot of capital. And because of the federal prohibition on cannabis, it's really, really difficult for operators to gain access to capital for cannabis. By and large, banks don't lend to the industry. And so that was the business opportunity that we saw. And so today, 32 properties, 12 states, 13 tenants.
Wow, exciting. So tell me the difference. I'm going to ask you some basic questions because you think everybody here is a sophisticated cannabis investor, and they're not. They're just normal people trying to make money, maybe in a frontier business. And we know that 3-4 years ago when this was out, everybody lost money on these Canadian companies that were doing that. And we were once invested more with them, and now not at all. But, as the investors look at this, tell me the difference between cannabis and hemp from growing and distribution.
Yeah, so it's an important distinction because hemp was legalized in the Farm Bill back in 2018, and it just created a loophole to allow what's called hemp-derived THC. THC is that psychoactive ingredient in cannabis that gets you a high. Cannabis and hemp is, in essence, it is the same plant, but hemp is low THC cannabis. Think of it that way. So below 0.3% THC, same exact plant. If it has below 0.3% THC, it's legal federally as hemp. If it's above 0.3% THC, it's illegal as cannabis. That's the basic way to think about it. But smart entrepreneurial businesses have figured out a way to take hemp, derive from that the small amounts of THC, further refine the hemp plant to get larger and larger quantities of THC. And those products can be sold in convenience stores and smoke shops in a very unregulated manner. The state legal business, where they're growing plants with much higher concentrations of THC, in some cases 20, 25%, 35% THC, very highly regulated, very highly tested product before it gets into the consumer. And that's the primary difference.
Okay. And so I have lots of clients that I put into Scott's company, Scott's Miracle Grow and so forth, because they were also purchasing land or fertilizing the land for hemp growers and for cannabis growers. I keep wanting to use the word pot, but I guess I'm denigrating it with the word pot. Old habits die hard sometimes. But where's Scott's in this market? Because that's a well-known Fortune 100 company. Where does Scott's fit in relative to you guys? Are totally different or similar?
Yeah, we serve the same industry. They have a business called Hawthorne, and Hawthorne is what serves the cannabis industry. So we're similar that we both serve the needs of the cannabis industry. We're also similar from the perspective that we're both what you would call a picks and shovel business to the cannabis industry. And the analogy is from the gold rush. If you look at the gold rush, there's this saying that the people that really made the money around the gold rush weren't the people that went out to strike gold, because many of them failed, but it was the people that sold them the picks and shovels. So what Hawthorne does specifically is they sell what I would call a medium to the industry. They sell the soil, they sell the fertilizer product, they sell all that growing medium that's necessary, because at the end of the day, cannabis is a plant. It's agriculture. And what does Scott's Miracle-Gro do? They provide supplies for people in the agriculture industry. And so cannabis happens to be a vertical within the agriculture industry that they saw as high growth and an opportunity to really provide their products and services.
So would you call them the Levi Strauss of the gold mining industry?
Yeah, maybe. Again, it's a picks and shovels business that survived. And, again, like us, we don't touch the plant in our business, but we do provide real estate capital, which is necessary for the operators to be successful.
Okay. So let me bring it back. I'm located in California, you're located in Connecticut. These are very different markets. And in California is kind of new on the scene with legalized cannabis long after Colorado did it. And they saw just a massive amount of tax revenue coming in that they could make. But it's not worked out in California very well. Of course, nothing really, once the state government touches, works out very well in California. That's just how it is. But they're working, and the problem that they're having in California, and maybe let me know if this is a national problem, is that they didn't create laws to stop the illegal flow of pot of cannabis. And there's so much of it out there, and it's priced better than legal, that it is killing the legal industry. Am I accurate in what I'm saying to you, Anthony?
I think you're largely accurate, and a big component of that is the taxation of the product on a state legal basis. What we've seen in California and in other states is when the state imposes a large taxation regime on the product, it elevates the price point for the consumer. And so let's unbundle this with some data. Estimates are that there's about $100 billion cannabis industry, and only less than a third of that, call it roughly $30 billion, is in that state legal market amongst all these states that I described earlier as being legal. So you have 2/3 of cannabis being sold illegally in the US. So consumers are there, and the opportunity in cannabis is switching that buying behavior from the illicit channel to the legal channel. And price point is a critical component of that. And when you layer on 15, 20, 25% taxes, it becomes really, really difficult to move the consumer from the illicit to the legal market. My last point on this is we could at a different time go into the details in some of the states like a Massachusetts or a Michigan where we saw the price point come down significantly in the legal channel, and you saw unit volumes go up significantly, because what we believe is happening is people are changing their buying behavior from the unregulated illicit market into the highly regulated and tested legal market. And it makes sense. If you get regulated, tested product for a similar price, you're probably going to opt for that.
Well, if you think about for those who study history, and I think of myself as a great student of history, and we look at the 1930s when we went from prohibition to a legal liquor market. It took years to get that in place. And it took the G-Men, and it took breaking up, people with stills before you finally got all that liquor to be federally stamped and revenue collected like it is today. The cannabis industry is not going to be any different than that. It's going to have the G-Men, the legal stamp at some point. Somebody in Congress is going to say, let's make this legal. Let's study it. Let's create products for people like me whose knees and back hurt every single day so we can get rid of this pain and get through the day without having to pop 800 milligrams of Motrin to get through this. And I know that's coming, but it's not there yet.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. As we sit here today recording this, we have two presidential candidates that have both said that they support cannabis reform. And what's really interesting is we have a presidential candidate that lives in a state where adult use is on the ballot. That's former President Trump is a Florida resident, and on the ballot this November is an initiative to allow adult use cannabis. And he has come out and specifically said he is going to vote for that. You also have Kamala Harris saying specifically she wants to legalize recreational marijuana. So you have two presidential candidates in this country that are pro-reform. And what makes it more difficult is this patchwork of state rules. And so the rules in Missouri are very different than the rules in California. So we do need that federal reform, and hopefully we can get one of these candidates to really be the champion for the industry.
Yeah, we'll see what happens on that. Good luck in California, because I know California has its teeth out and its nails sharpened, looking for tax revenue from anywhere they can get in. That brand new cannabis industry is going to be it.
And a lot of the states moving east have learned from what has happened in Colorado and California. And so when you look at the eastern states, they tend to take a very different approach to their medical marijuana and their recreational cannabis programs by having more limited license structures, maybe not going as hard on the taxation. They certainly do tax it. And you've actually seen some much better constructs in a state like Missouri or a state like Pennsylvania, which is still medical, or in Ohio or in Illinois, et cetera. Not everybody gets it right. Certainly New York has had their issues, but they're starting to get a little bit on the right track.
Great. We're talking with Anthony Coniglio, and here at Meet the Expert with Elliott Callan. If you want to reach us, I'm at Elliott, ELLIOT, at Prosperity Financial Group, or it's www.prosperityfinancialgroup. Reach out to me, 925-314-8503, for this and 70 plus other episodes on Meet the Expert with interesting people like Anthony. And we're talking about the real estate part of hemp and cannabis, which is a little twist on, is this product going to become legal or not? Of course, if the product becomes legal and you're in the real estate business, you're going to have a boom. If the product gets held up, like in California, and they can't manage legal and illegal, then it doesn't help the companies like him. And our job is to find companies like Anthony's, which is NewLake Capital Partners, a public company, and see if that fits in with people's portfolios, or package it as an ETF world or a mutual fund world or whatever it is out there. So let's talk about who you're competing with and what makes you different out there in the cannabis real estate world. Your biggest competitor is who?
Yeah, our biggest competitor, and really our only competitor right now, would be what's called IIPR. And when you look at the landscape, when we started this business nearly 6 years ago, there was a much more competitive landscape than there is today. We actually have fewer competitors today than when we started the business a couple of years ago. Banks generally, by and large, don't serve this industry. And the reason is because it's federally illegal. Most landlords can't provide space because most landlords have debt on their buildings. And when they rent out to a tenant, they have to provide the rent roll to the bank. And there's a clause in all real estate debt which says that you cannot rent to somebody who breaks the law. And so as soon as they send in the rent roll, the bank says, we're going to call this loan, or you need to kick out the tenant. Hence the opportunity set for us. We've been able to arrange our business so that we can provide that capital, so that we can borrow, so we can raise capital in the public markets and provide it out to our tenant base. And so there are a handful of banks around the country that may provide some mortgage lending, but by and large, there's not a lot of competition there in this space. It's also a very difficult space to provide capital to, because as you said earlier, lots of people have lost money over the last couple of years, and it's part of why we have less competition today.
Yeah, and I want to talk about clouds, because clouds are the negative world, and every company, has to look out at the horizon and see what the clouds are there. And so last summer, I believe it was in one of the California national, maybe state parks, the police stumbled across 6 kids that were camping there. All 6 were dead. All 6 had gotten high, and the cannabis was laced with fentanyl. And so we live in a world, sadly, very sadly, where fentanyl, basically a recreational drug, can kill you now. And it didn't used to be like that. When I was growing up, that wasn't a conversation we ever had, period. But now we have to have that conversation. What does that do for future investments, and the fear that if we make this legal too much, or we put too much emphasis in, we are helping the Mexican cartels and China produce more fentanyl and kill our children?
Yeah, I would say first off, it's a terrible story and should never happen. I would venture to bet that they did not purchase that product in the state legal channel. And it's an argument for why we need to have greater regulation, greater control over the products. And to the people are buying this product, as I said earlier, $100 billion industry in the US. Let's buy that product in a state legal channel or even a federally legal channel. Let's buy safe, regulated, tested products so we can be sure that that never happens again. I know I sound like a politician now, but really that is the case. And when you look at the incidence of people going to a hospital for cannabis consumption, I think a large part of that is it's bought outside of the state legal channel where it's not controlled, where you can buy hemp-derived products. I can't imagine why anybody would lay something with fentanyl. Perhaps it's co-contamination. But when you're in the state legal channel, the opportunity for that to happen, I'm not going to say never, but it's got to be pretty darn close to never, given the strict approach that you have to take to operating under those regulations and laws.
Okay, let's talk to the over 50, over 55 crowd for one moment. Not about investing in your company, but that legitimate need for these type of products. Because they're using alternative products to this that are very legal and some by prescription and some very unsatisfied with the results, like myself. I think, for a guy who was a jock when he was young and played a lot of sports and threw his body in front of hockey pucks and football players and, thought he was Mike Ditka on any given day, or Bobby Orr. You throw your body out there, when you start crossing those 55 markers, you wake up hurting every single day. Your neck hurts, your knee hurts, your hips are killing you. You got titanium in different parts of your body. And so the world of hemp, or the world of cannabis, not necessarily the world of getting high, but the world of alleviating pain and sleeping better, is intriguing, exciting, and I think opportunistic for somebody is in my generation.
Yeah.
And that helps you. That plays into your world at NewLake Partners, because that's we'll create more product because there's more demand and so forth. All the wonderful things that you're hoping happens on a national level. So what should I be as a consumer now? So turn it around, not investor, but I'm a consumer now as well. And I'm one of those people that I don't buy these products. I rarely walk in a store. I'm not 100% comfortable. I don't feel it should be like these products are really been tested or scientifically put together. And maybe they all are, and they're not, in my mind, done like that. And certainly gummies are about haphazard and random, because gummies, we know even good products with gummies, they have a problem with efficacy in gummies, period. They just do. That's the nature of the gummy product. So what should I be looking at in the hemp and eventually in the cannabis? And I'm in California. What should I be looking at that's going to change my world, rock my boat, so to speak?
First and foremost, I think you should be talking to somebody in the state legal business, one of those licensed dispensaries where you can go in and you could have an educated conversation, a conversation with people that are educated and can educate you. I see this consultative approach. We own 17 dispensaries in the portfolio, and I tour dispensaries all the time. And I am in the over 50 category with you. It takes a while to shed that, right? We've grown up in a society that really has viewed cannabis consumption very, very negatively. And it does take a while to shed that, feel that stigma that you're doing something wrong. But when I tour these dispensaries, I see these conversations happening all the time about whether it's for this, a shoulder or a knee, whatnot. I even talked to one, they call them bud tenders. I even talked to one bud tender on one tour where he celebrated earlier that day the 1-year anniversary with a patient of his where they had weaned him off of opiates. He had come in, he was on opiates. He said, I want to wean myself off. And he was able to replace the opiates for pain management with cannabis, which was a much healthier choice. So I'd say find that licensed dispensary, have those conversations. Listen, there are so many anecdotal stories that we've all heard about friends and family who've had success, whether it be somebody who has cancer that wants appetite stimulation or that wants nausea control, or somebody that just wants some pain relief. We need more research in this country, and that's why what's happening right now with the potential rescheduling, the DEA is evaluating rescheduling from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. We need more research. At Schedule 1, research is really stifled. By moving it to Schedule 3, we could get much more research. So we could come to you as an industry, Elliot, and we could say, We've done 2 years of studies on 3,000 patients, and we know that this particular compound of cannabis will give you that knee relief that you're looking for.
Well, that's pretty exciting, Anthony. I hope you're right. I have friends who are doing cannabis, very smart, very wealthy friends that are doing, and they're doing it to sleep better at night, but they're also doing it to get high, and they're
yes,
yeah, they're doing their gummies with wine or gummies with whiskey, and like okay.
Hey, well, you know what? Think of it this way. You're seeing a replacement happen with the younger demographic, and we have some charts about this in our investor presentation where we show the younger demographic is actually replacing liquor with cannabis. They're consuming more cannabis and less liquor. And why is that? You consume cannabis, you're not going to have liver damage from consuming cannabis, or you're not going to have the hangover you necessarily get from cannabis. You're not going to have some of the other physical ailments. We have thousands and thousands of people a year dying from alcohol consumption, not even talking about on the roads. I'm just talking about liver damage and other health issues. You don't see that with cannabis. And I think that younger cohort understands that and is getting comfortable. If they're going to relax with a product, they're looking at cannabis versus alcohol.
It's very interesting. You're so right. And we talk about investing and making money because that's our business. And if that's something that you want to do, let me know. I know the Diageo and the Constellation folks and the people that have shelving, you might say, out there for hard liquor have realized that the under 40 crowd is a hard liquor crowd and a cannabis crowd. And then the over 40 crowd is still hard liquor. Whiskey is probably more popular now than it was a decade ago. That's a vodka product. But yeah, and people like me that love wine and have 1,000 bottles of big red wine are getting the population of that group is shrinking as yours, so to speak, the hard liquor and the cannabis industry grows. So the wine industry would like to put a bullet on your back because you're not helping them, and the hard alcohol industry is saying, if you're really my competition, I'm not a happy person with you. So it's hard to win in that case.
Constellation Brands invested billions into this industry. Constellation saw the trend back in 2018, 2019, and made a multi-billion-dollar investment into a Canadian company, which in turn made investments into the U.S. And so Constellation, when you go back and you see the reasoning for their investment, they knew it was legal in Canada, and they wanted to be early to be able to learn and somewhat have a hand in how it gets legalized in the U.S. because they wanted to replace that lost revenue they expected to occur with the transition you just described.
Well, that's smart business, no doubt about that. Constellation is a well-run company.
Well-run company. The investment itself, if you looked at it, hasn't worked out for them entirely. They've had to restructure, but I think they see the long-term trend, and it's just going to be a matter of time.
Yep. So, Anthony, how do people reach you if they're interested in more information? And how do they reach you if they want to, besides investing through us in your company, what's the symbol and how do they get more information?
Yeah. So our symbol is NLCP, NewLake Capital Partners, NLCP. You could find us at newlake.com, newlake.com. We have an investor page. Given it's the cannabis sector, not every broker dealer will allow you to invest into our stock. We actually have a drop-down page on our investor page about the broker dealers we typically see allowing custody of our stock.
Yeah, we do that. We clear on a Schwab platform or custody on Schwab. So we rarely get boxed out of anything.
And that's where I've bought my stock. I've been a buyer of our stock in the market as well during some open periods. And
yep, good for you and good for Schwab. Thank you, Schwab, for doing that. It used to be thank you, Mother Merrill in the old days that everybody do it. They're one of the people that probably you're fighting with on stuff like that, I would imagine.
Yep.
So we've been talking with Anthony Coniglio of NewLake Capital Partners. We've been talking about the real estate world and the cannabis world and the hemp world and why it works out really well from an investment standpoint. Maybe it's a little bit early but one of these Congresses out there, maybe the next one, is going to go and make this legal, just like alcohol became legal in the 1930s. And the temperance movement was 100% opposed to it. There are always going to be people that are 100% opposed to any type of thing like this. And I get that. I understand that. It's fundamentally or religiously against their values. Good. Stay away from it. Let's talk about how to use it. Anthony, thanks for being part of our show today.
Thank you, Elliot. I really appreciate it. One final thought on we agree. Pew and Gallup polls show 70% of Americans believe that we should legalize cannabis. what do we as Americans all agree to the tune of 70%? Not much.
Not much. And I would be in that 70%. People can make grown-up choices, and let's make that thing work for Americans. It's silly that it's a untested and not well put together by the federal government. So thanks for being part of the show, everybody. You've been listening to Meet the Expert. We'll see you again, Elliot at prosperityfinancialgroup.com. Have a great day, everybody.